As many of you know, I believe that Donald Trump is not only morally perfect, but he's also incapable of making an incorrect decision on anything ever. And on Liberation Day, the Great White Hope announced a large number of tariffs on a number of countries, including China, which is our major trading partner, and the tariff rate is going to be 44%. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I don't think putting a 44% tariff on China is going to be good for our economy in the foreseeable future. It's particularly bad, for example, for small businesses that rely on China for importing goods.
What? Okay. Hi, I am the founder and CEO of a US-based footwear company that has 12 US employees and has created fully convertible high heel technology. Where do you manufacture? Our product is obviously really unique, and so we require specialty injection molding, which is only really available at scale for footwear in China.
Why? Don't you manufacture in the USA?
So we actually don't have scaled footwear manufacturing or really apparel manufacturing of any kind in the US.
Okay, well, I think we should.
Yeah, I mean, that would be really great. We'd be able to manufacture in much faster times and have more direct control over our supply chain, but we physically don't have manufacturers here.
Okay, well, what if I change your import rate from 10% to 99%?
We still wouldn't have US manufacturers here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do it right now.
Why?
Look, I don't think we should be so reliant on China. So if you're going to insist on manufacturing in China, I'm going to charge you 99%.
Okay, to be clear, I'm not insisting on manufacturing in China. It's just the only place I could manufacture.
So not the USA?
No, not right now. I mean, if you want to invest in making some manufacturing facilities, it would probably take a couple years and several $1 million. But if you want to do that, I mean, we could talk about it when those are ready.
No, I'm going to do it right now.
You get the point. Virtually everyone agrees that these tariffs are a bad idea, at least on their face. And that's great, because I know that my audience is made up mostly of mindless sheep who enjoy you having basic facts reaffirmed to them over and over again. However, we're going to do something dangerous and try and steelman the opposition so we can at least get an idea of why the people doing this are doing this. The underlying philosophy behind these tariffs is called reindustrialization, which basically means bringing manufacturing back home from overseas. People argue this is a bad philosophy because of something called basic economics, which posits that you should embrace trading with people who specialize in certain things so that you can focus on other things. You don't need to manufacture everything you use in your own country. It doesn't make sense to grow your own olives when you can just buy olive oil at the store. And by buying olive oil and going into a trade deficit with the store, you actually create more value for yourself because you can use that olive oil to produce more valuable food. In the same sense, if you try to manufacture steel here instead of buying it more cheaply from China, then everything else is just going to cost more on top of that. This comment left on a YouTube video sums up this sentiment nicely. But here is the fundamental issue, and one I actually quite sympathize with. At a certain point, reducing the material cost of goods does not lead to an improvement in well-being. What's left out of the equation is that having a stable job and having a living wage is a good in and of itself. Even if it's a job that's not economically efficient at creating whatever output, we're talking about, having that job is good because it creates the conditions and the stability needed to produce other social goods, like being able to raise a family. Here's Harvard economist Oren Cass on how free trade does increase GDP per capita, but misses something important.
That, of course, this is going to create a lot of winners and losers. And the argument is typically that the winners can compensate the losers, right? And it's important to say we've actually done that through progressive taxation, through an ever bigger safety net. The people who are struggling, who have lost their jobs and left behind places, they too have more stuff than ever before. What they don't have is a secure job that allows them to support a family. And so this is the first thing GDP per capita misses, is it completely misses where and for who the GDP is happening.
Over the last 10 to 20 years, the U.S., the typical working family, has not been well served by that deal, I don't think.
No question. And this is where, so it sometimes gets, people have differing viewpoints and it can get confusing and but here's where I think there can be great agreement. Working people making living wages. And I think that would be very surprising for someone on the center right to sort of agree with maybe the more progressive wing of the Democrats. But that is absolutely a value that we have lost. And do you think that's something that the right will follow you along with? Because it's something I think the left has been screaming about for a very long time.
Well, I think we're moving in that direction.
Right.
I think it is a process of transition when a party reorients, the term realignment gets used a lot. And then when you look behind that at the sorts of people I work with, the policy wonks, researchers, writers, journalists, lawyers, folks sort of 40 and under are overwhelmingly oriented in this way.
Right.
And so I have a great deal of hope that as that moves to be the center of the party, you really are going to see a different Republican Party that still loves markets and wants them to work, but has a much better understanding of their limitation, has much more concern for what is happening to the typical working family, and wants to figure out how to keep their conservative principles, but apply them somehow to use public policy and make things better.
So socialism. Essentially.
Now, nobody loves the left and right coming together to destroy the neoliberal status quo more than I do. However, 44% tariffs on China is probably not going to fix that problem in any meaningful way right now. It's also contradictory because Trump's advisors claims that the revenue that they get from tariffs will be used to fund things like tax cuts for the working class, which it's like, okay, in the short term, maybe so. But if companies do reorient supply chains and manufacture stuff back home, then you won't have that tariff revenue anymore. So how are you going to fund things? The meme argument is that this is a negotiating tactic and Trump's going to reduce the tariffs once he gets concessions from the countries that he is imposing them on. And just to be clear, he's proven that that's possible, and he's done that before. He got Colombia to concede to accepting deported migrants by threatening a tariff and then removing it, and he got Mexico to do something similar in 2019. He's also completely bullshitted this by claiming, for example, he got concessions from Canada by imposing tariffs on them and then withdrawing them, even though they had already agreed to all of the concessions that he got them to supposedly agree to by using a tariff. But if I had to guess, Trump's advisors said, let's just throw out the largest tariffs we can do by calculating them in this apparently weird way using ChatGPT. Who knows? Wouldn't put it past them, but by putting all of the worst tariffs out, at the beginning, the highest rates, they can shock the market, bottom it out a little bit, and then I'm sure they're going to slowly peel these back as they make deals and announce different things and so on and so forth. If the Trump administration announces some sort of tax credit for small businesses who are affected by the tariffs, that would be an intelligent move. And if it happens, then I'm going to have to go, damn, Trump's actually is playing a little bit of 4D chess here. Not really. He's just not as dumb as he often appears and is in many ways. But overall, keeping the tariff as it is unmanageable and unsustainable. Here's a good clip of economist Paul Krugman giving a simple example of the kind of logistical problems that come up with Trump's tariffs.
And by putting different tariffs on for different countries, you create an immediate problem. So we just put a much higher tariff on goods from the European Union than from Britain. So if something from the European Union crosses the English Channel, spends 5 minutes in an English port, and then heads for America, is that a British good or is that a European good? You would have to have what we call rules of origin, which are very onerous. The amount of paperwork involved in enforcing rules of origin is huge. So this is anyone who knew anything about trade would say, wait, wildly different tariff rates on seemingly similar countries is a big, big problem. Probably a lot of EU goods transshipped through Northern Ireland to get the lower tariff rate that applies to Great Britain. And, it's crazy.
Now, another interesting clip from this conversation with Paul Krugman is where he says that even though tariffs are objectively bad from an economic point of view, there's still justification to do them. Here's him explaining why Canada should implement retaliatory tariffs against the United States.
I would not advise Carney to turn the other cheek towards U.S. tariffs, even though on a straight cost-benefit position that might make sense, because you have to respond to that. You have to do something that appeals to Canadian national pride, which very much exists. So I would say that there's a pretty good case for retaliatory stuff. Yeah, if you can target it, if you can go after Tesla, that might help. But for retaliatory stuff, partly just to, in some hope of changing U.S. policy, and also with some hope of at least offering some satisfaction to national national concerns.
I just thought this was interesting because it shows how, even though the economist agrees, and it is the case that economically tariffs increase costs, if you step out and examine the frame that we're looking at, you realize there are more things that matter than just the economic cost of goods. National pride is even kind of vague, but again, to my point about how human well-being does not necessarily increase just because the cost of certain goods gets reduced. The other thing that everyone keeps bringing up is that the stock market crashed. And I'm just gonna, this is just financial advice if you're watching this channel, okay? This is for your own well-being. If you cannot pay your living expenses because you've lost money in the stock market, that is 100% your fault. This is partly why I'm kind of paternalistic and I don't believe in the ultra-libertarian anyone should be able to do anything. Like, you should have to sign a contract before you are allowed to start trading, which you are, by the way, but no one reads them, but you should be forced to read them. The stock market can crash at any moment for literally any reason, okay? Plague, war, solar flares, bad vibes, whatever. The number one rule when it comes to investing in the stock market is you do not invest in the stock market if you cannot afford to lose almost all of that money in a short period of time. If you're close to retirement, you shouldn't be in the stock market. Most of your assets should be in fixed income like bonds and money market funds. If you've ever had a retirement account and you've logged into Vanguard or Fidelity or whatever, they have a whole table and schedule that says if you're going to retire, 30 years from now, yes, be 100% in stocks because it doesn't matter if it's a short-term loss because you don't lose any money if you don't sell. But if you're 10 years from retirement or sooner, then you should be 10% stocks and 90% bonds and fixed income. So do not feed me this neoliberal propaganda that the stock market going down is the single most important indicator of the well-being of our economy, because our stock market has risen quite a bit, and yet many indicators of well-being, like mental health statistics, seem to be going in the opposite direction. What does matter is if commodity prices go up, right? If food becomes more expensive for the working class and housing becomes more expensive, then that is what we should be concerned about. And given that Trump has proposed a 44% tariff on China and a lot of other countries, it's very conceivable that that could happen because, as we all know, Trump is capable of making terrible, stupid decisions. And I'll also say, and this is where I'm biased, although I know I'm correct, I do not care if these tariffs make an iPhone cost $2,300. We have reached a point within neoliberalism where advanced technology is making us sicker and worse and more isolated and more detached, and it's not a good thing. I would rather have everyone lose their ability to get cheap new iPhones if it meant ensuring that people had more, stable jobs in the United States. At a certain point, economic innovation isn't innovation. Just because it's knowledge work doesn't mean it's actually more valuable.
You think about where is the real innovation in the US? Jury is out on AI, but let's say over the prior 10 years, right? The innovative companies are Instagram and Facebook and Uber and apps on your phone, essentially.
We are primarily a podcasting-based economy. We are a hot take economy. We are an opinion-driven economy. We do not make anything anymore except takes. We are a grievance-based economy. We are a rage-based economy. And we're shifting now.
Anyway, it's my responsibility as a content creator to apparently weigh in on these issues. Actually, it's not. I could very well just not say anything. And I did go back and forth on this of anyway, good luck and Godspeed.